It was amazingly visionary. I mean, again, all the way back to the 60s. And then certainly in the 90s as the legislature and groups of conservation groups and advocates for open space realize, you know what, the reason people buy land is changing. Yeah. And so we've got to continue, if we want to continue to conserve open space, we've got to give people another option, and that's where wildlife management came in. If you look at NRI's data, what you'll see is the really big ranches, ranch consolidation. You're seeing some growth there, and you're seeing a whole lot of growth in that sub 100 acre.
Correct.
And everything in the middle is declining.
Correct.
They're getting broken up or they're getting consolidated. We've only got so much land, and we got more and more people moving here. So land size is going to get smaller. Our hope is that we can help people manage, even if it's a smaller piece, manage it as well. As people still need homes. People are going to move here. They need places to live. We're going to have to consume more of that land. It's just the way it is. And you've got other demands on that land now too, right? Lots of new demands on rural land that we haven't had. Mention AI, data centers, renewables, transmission lines.
Oh yeah.
Pipelines, lots of infrastructure demands as well.
Welcome to the Landowner Insider, the podcast for Texas landowners who want to stay up to date with current events shaping our state. Here we talk about issues that actually impact your Texas lands, markets, water, wildlife, policy, and the decisions that are shaping our state. I'm your host, Kasey Mock with the Mock Ranches Group, and in each episode, we sit down with the people who are shaping the future of Texas. We're not afraid to ask the hard questions. This is the Landowner Insider podcast presented by the Mock Ranches Group.
Shane Kiefer, Plateau Land Wildlife.
That's right.
Thanks for driving to Stephenville.
I'm happy to be here.
I was really surprised to get you April 27th.
It is a challenging time of year for us. Open space deadlines on Thursday. That is a testament to how fantastic our team is at Plateau. They're handling everything. We're in good shape. There's a ton of work left to do, but it's getting done, and it'll all get done every year.
We booked this date, and Kendall, I asked Kendall to call and check in with you, and then I immediately looked at my calendar and said, there's no way Shane can come. Why is April the 30th such a big deadline, Shane?
It is. So the property tax calendar works on a different schedule than the calendar year does, right? So for us, we handle open space valuations, ag, wildlife, timber valuations for folks, mostly wildlife, but we do a whole bunch of just straight run-of-the-mill ag applications for folks as well. And those are all due sometime between January 1st and April 30th for the current tax year.
Yeah.
And so all the work we've been doing, starting back last May, comes to a head in about 4 months, January to April, and everything's got to be done. Believe it or not, some people wait till the last minute, call us April 15th and say, I think I need to do something. I'm really interested in making this switch, or I got this letter. Sometimes appraisal districts are late with their requests too. Can't blame the landowner for that. But we try really hard to remind people all year, especially as we approach that filing period between January and April, that you need to do something. Nevertheless, some folks like to wait, and we try to help as many of them as we can. And we do it till we simply cannot do it anymore. And up until Thursday, we'll be getting stuff in the mail, logging proof that we mailed it, so that if there's any question about when it was sent, we've got that proof. And I got a whole bunch of people working really hard on it right now, and I'm staying out of the way and answering the phone if something critical comes up. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. So
you and I worked together from 2000 and I don't know if it was 9 or 10.
Somewhere in there.
We worked together for about 5 years. So I had graduated from Tarleton with an ag degree, went into construction, and then used my degree actually for a while as with AgriLife Extension as a county extension agent, and then came from extension to Plateau. Yep. And was super blessed and fortunate to work with you guys for about a 5-year term. Give us a background on Plateau. How did it start? Where did it start? Who founded it? Tell us about Plateau a little bit.
So Plateau was founded by two gentlemen, Burl Armstrong and David Braun. Mm-hmm. You know both of them.
I think I could probably give the speech. I gave it so many times.
You could. You had that elevator speech down. David Braun, Burl Armstrong, founded Plateau, officially started business, I think started as a DBA in 96. So this is our 30th year. Wow. Officially incorporated, I think, in maybe early 98, but started doing work in 1996. And they did that because they saw a gap in landowners knowing how to apply this brand new opportunity, which was the wildlife management valuation. So David and Burl had both worked with a very large coalition, TWA, cattle raisers, Farm Bureau, lots of folks involved in getting the open space valuation for wildlife management passed.
Article 8, Section 1D1 of the Texas Constitution.
That's right, in the Constitution. They did it once in the early 90s and realized they had to pass a constitutional amendment. So they had to come back and do it again. And they did that not so they could start a business, but they realized after it was put in place, nobody knew how to take advantage of it.
Was that in 95? Was that when that happened?
95, passed in 95,
Yeah.
Was effective in 96. And so nobody knew how to take advantage of it. Appraisal districts didn't know how to administer it. There really weren't many rules around it at that time. They passed a law, so this is a great idea, but nobody knew how to use it. And so Burl had the idea to start a company to help landowners directly, one-on-one, get into wildlife management valuation.
Yeah, that amendment allowed landowners to manage open space for indigenous wildlife.
That's right. That's right. It's simply put, it's a different type of agricultural use.
Yeah.
In the tax code, it is just another type of agriculture, just like running livestock or growing crops, but instead you're managing primarily for native wildlife. You've got to perform a minimum of 3 out of 7 activities each year in order to maintain that qualification. So there's requirements for active use, just like there is with any other ag use.
You've got to show primary use.
Primary use has to be for native Texas wildlife. That's right.
Yeah, hear that again, people. Like, you have to show primary use of ag or primary use of wildlife or primary use of timber or primary use of bees, for example, for ag, in order to maintain this, because it is a very favorable tax valuation.
Very favorable.
It's not an exemption.
It's not an exemption. It's a tax valuation. Exemptions mean you don't pay taxes on a certain portion of your property. Yeah. You're paying taxes on every part of your property, but it's valued in a different way. So instead of being valued at market value levels, which can be very high depending on where you are in the state, particularly as you get close to urban areas, highly desirable areas, those market values may be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 or more per acre.
Or more.
And in an ag valuation or wildlife valuation or even timber, it's valued based on its productive capacity, essentially. It's a complicated calculation, but what can this land produce on an annual basis, and we're going to value the land based on that, and we're going to tax you based on that value. So instead of $20,000 an acre in market value, it might be $100 an acre for native range use, for grazing livestock. And so you're going to be taxed on that much lower value, and very favorable in the least expensive parts of the state where land is of lowest value. You're talking about a 90% tax reduction. In those areas around those urban corridors, high growth areas, you're talking 99% plus tax reduction. Just on the land, though. Just on the land.
Yeah, not on the improvements.
That's right. Not on the improvements, not on your house or anything else, just on the land. But that is significant. There is no other tax break that's as significant as that, other than a complete exemption, which you're not going to get unless you're certain nonprofits using the land for those nonprofit purposes. So there is no other better deal for landowners. And the intent, and it goes all the way back to the 60s, actually, the original ag use valuation, which was 1D, that required you be an actual farmer or rancher. You had to gain at least 50% of your income from farming or ranching. Even hardcore farming ranchers now may not get 50% of their income from farming and ranching. Right. So as we got into the 70s, the legislature realized, you know what, that's not working for it's not working for everybody, and it's not protecting those open space lands that we really want to protect. People are buying it, and they're using it for farming and ranching, but they're getting income. They've got other jobs. They're getting income from elsewhere. It's hard to make money farming and ranching. And so they opened it to what they called open space, and that was just how the land's used: primary use, agricultural use, timber use. There's some others, but that was the key that kind of opened it up to be the program it is today, which is the most widespread and successful private lands conservation incentive in the country.
Yeah.
So really critical. And in the 90s, they added wildlife management to that list.
If I remember right, the tax code specifically says to promote the preservation of open space land.
That's right.
The legislature shall allow shall allow special valuation for these uses, and it lists the uses, right? If I remember right.
And that shall, you remember it well. That shall.
Yeah, man, I taught that class a lot.
I know you did.
A lot of workshops.
That shall is critical. And what it means is the legislature can't decide they don't like it anymore and take it away. They'd have to pass another constitutional amendment. And we get that question a lot. Is it going away, particularly about wildlife? Wildlife's been around for 30 years now. It's not going anywhere. And to go somewhere, it'd have to be another constitutional amendment. The people of the state would have to pass 3/4 of the legislature first, and then the people of the state would have to vote to change that constitution again. So it's as secure as any other form of ag valuation.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and there's no real push to remove it in any form. So that shall is really critical. Interestingly, at least to me, timber is not a shall. Timber's a may.
Okay.
Timber's a little bit different. It's an open space valuation.
Yeah, the calculation's different though.
Calculations are different. Productivity values are different. It's a whole different animal. We can talk about it some. It's a little more complex. But that was one that it's a may. Technically, the legislature could change the law and say timber's not qualifying use anymore. Again, no reason to think they would do that. But ag and wildlife are very heavily protected in the Constitution. And as you said, it is a significant incentive that you have to earn, and you have to earn it by using your land for those purposes. You have to, just because it looks like great wildlife habitat or just because it looks like great pasture land, that doesn't get you qualified. You got to use it.
Yeah, it's a verb.
It's a verb. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Plateau's grown a lot. I think when I was there, we did something like $2 million a year. Y'all have grown a lot.
Grown a lot. Yes. When I started, I think I may have been the 10th employee. And that's including some shared employees with our sister firm, Broad and Gresham.
Yeah, the law firm.
Maybe 10 employees. We've got over 50 employees now.
Wow.
30 plus of those, maybe 35 of those are field-based folks, biologists or technicians in the field doing work with landowners on the land. That's the part I'm most proud of. We got lots and lots of quality biologists and technicians out doing work on the land. So we've grown quite a bit.
Where are your offices now?
So our main office is still in Dripping Springs, just like it was back then. That's where we started. That's where Burl and David started, was in Dripping Springs. We're still there. We've got an office in Bernie. As well. And then we've got staff out in Montgomery in East Texas. We've got staff in Central Texas around Temple. And we've got staff up near the Metroplex in the Burleson area.
Got it. Yeah,
so we've got 5 regions now covering everything from Collin County to the north. And we do work in lots of other counties, but our main regions are basically Collin County to the north, all the way down to Bear, west to Edwards County, and east all the way to Liberty. And so that triangle between the major metropolitan areas and everything in between basically is where we serve. About 64 counties now that we focus on. But we work every year. We work in 100 plus different counties doing various things.
What's your role now? You were senior wildlife biologist then.
I was. I'm the CEO now and co-owner with Burl. So David, 2 years ago, finally decided to retire. He's in Asia right now with his lovely wife.
I've been communicating with him about some stuff recently. It's been really fun to reconnect.
It is. And he'll send you pictures and make you feel bad about what you're doing while he's out traveling the world. But David decided to retire, sold me his interest. So I'm co-owner with Burl, now CEO. Like you said, started as a senior wildlife biologist and kind of invented, we were a small company. So I kind of invented jobs that needed to be done going along and worked my way up, and I was in a position to take over it. And I knew not long after I started, if this company could be what I thought it could, what it was then, and what I could see it being in the future, it was a place I'd be happy the rest of my career. I've been truly blessed to be able to work at Plateau. A bad day for me is better than I think most people's good days at work. It's fantastic, and particularly when we're working with landowners. So,
I always enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a great season of life.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. It was a great season of life. I thought Plateau prioritized quality and honesty and profitability and all the good things. I mean, it was a great season of life.
We've got to be we're a private company. We've got to be profitable. That gives us some advantages. There are folks we work with that they don't Better or worse, they don't really want to work with the government. They don't want to work with, and we've got lots of friends in Parks and Wildlife, and we partner with Parks and Wildlife and other agencies all the time because our goals are the same. But there are some landowners who just aren't comfortable working with a government agency, and they like working with a private company. So we have to be profitable. The only way we stay in business.
Well, you can buy somebody's time is the truth. I mean, they want a certain level of service.
That's right.
Yeah.
That too. And I tell folks this all the time when I'm talking to my friends and colleagues in state agencies, we walk onto a property with a level of buy-in that they don't always get because we're getting paid, right? If I'm paying you money to come out, I'm more inclined to listen to what you have to say. I hope,
Correct.
Because there's value. There's real value there, and so I think we get that benefit with some folks, so that's a pleasure. It's taken both, and we serve folks that may have a hard time getting attention elsewhere just because there's so many of them. There's so many. We'll file this year by Thursday. When Thursday closes, we'll have filed about 1,250 applications. Wow. That's just for 2026.
Wow.
And about 2,000 annual reports for wildlife management. Those numbers were almost inconceivable back when you were around. And so the amount of work we can do with a relatively small staff is one of the things that impresses me most, because we're working with landowners, that volume of landowners, like it or not, as more people move to Texas, they want to have ranches, they want to buy land, that land's going to get broken up. But if we can work with each of them and they're all working towards a common goal of taking care of their open space or managing for wildlife, we think that mitigates some of that impact, right? Parcel lines are just lines on a map. But if we've got folks working together, then, or we're at least working towards a common goal of managing for native wildlife, that's better for everybody. We're preserving some of that value that rural land has, even though we've got a whole lot more people living on it. So.
Companies like Plateau don't exist in other states because of the way the wildlife is managed and the land is managed. Texas, we're 97%. That's shrinking a little bit because Texas Parks and Wildlife has been purchasing some big lands.
Yeah, they're not going to get anywhere close to putting a dent in that.
It may actually be 95% now. I don't know the number.
You hear all the numbers. I tend to use 95. It depends on you take out the roads and all that stuff. Yeah. So, but let's say 95.
Yeah,
that's
95%. So 95% of our wildlife is managed on private lands. That's why the state incentivizes this, because native wildlife today is still held in public trust.
Yes,
I think it should be. There's a lot of debates. There's a lot of debates about that. And I'm very, as you are, I believe, I'm very, very pro landowner rights.
Yes,
I'm very pro landowner rights. I think the landowners are the ones making the investments. At the end of the day, the landowners are the ones feeding the public resource.
Yep.
Right. So I'm very pro landowner rights, but I do believe that there's a significant benefit long term for the sustainability of all things wildlife, that wildlife is held in public trust.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what that means is white-tailed deer, Rio Grande turkeys, bobwhite quail, migratory game birds, squirrels, reptiles, all of it. It's all a publicly owned resource, meaning the deer that are on my property that I'm feeding, that I'm hunting, and that I'm monetizing are still a public resource.
Absolutely.
Right. And so the state has to incentivize me to manage the habitat to take care of them. They do that through a lot of ways. One of them is a favorable tax valuation.
Arguably the most important, and I make this point a lot. So if you look at A&M's Natural Resources Institute, Roel Lopez over there, they're doing fantastic work on
great stuff.
What's happening to our working lands in Texas. But about 80%, 140 million acres of the state is working lands. That's ag, wildlife, timber. 80% of the state. That number, 140 million acres, is more than any other state. You got to scratch out Alaska because it's different. Even Nevada, which I think has the most in the continental U.S., contiguous continental U.S., I think it has the most publicly owned land. They've got about 70 million acres of publicly owned land. So if you just take those numbers and look at 70 million acres potentially protected in Nevada as public land, Texas doubles that all on private land.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do.
No.
And so that's why our property tax system is so important. It's why this incentive is so important. Because if you get rid of that, it's not that suddenly everybody's going to stop farming and ranching and managing for wildlife, but a lot of those people in the middle and on those margins no longer have an incentive to actively use that land. And that active use is what's really important.
You look at our property values compared to like Nebraska, for instance. Nebraska has a very high property tax. It keeps their property values down, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
Which makes it hard. It's hard on everybody.
It is.
It's hard on everybody because your ranch isn't worth as much money if you wanted to go sell it. But if you want to go buy it and operate it, your property tax is a lot higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was amazingly visionary. I mean, again, all the way back to the 60s. And then certainly in the 90s as the legislature and groups of conservation groups and advocates for open space realize, you know what, the reason people buy land is changing. And so we've got to continue, if we want to continue to conserve open space, we've got to give people another option. And that's where wildlife management came in. And that was 30 years ago. And there's probably, NRI will tell you it's 7.5 million acres. It's probably north of 8 million acres in the state under wildlife management. Again, that's a small portion of the 140 million in open space, ag, and timber total. But it's significant. That's 8 million acres, 8 plus probably, because they're always a few years behind. That's just the way the data works. 8 million plus acres in wildlife management. That's a significant amount of, again, all private land.
That's 6%.
Every one of those landowners is required to actively manage for wildlife.
Counties like Hayes County, Bear County,
Much
County, is it 30%?
Offhand, I don't, but there are counties where it's probably close to a quarter. If you look at a map of our clients in Hayes County, it looks like we've got corridors of wildlife habitat connected through individual private landowners all over that county. It's where we've been the longest. It's where we've done the most work. But Hayes, Travis, Blanco, and one thing about all those counties, at least on the western side of Hayes, it's not the world's greatest agricultural land.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
It's difficult in a lot of areas, especially as properties get smaller. As you get smaller, it's hard to be productive. And so wildlife really shines in areas.
Too big to mow and too small to graze.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and then you get a scenario where they get overgrown, they're a fire hazard, and massive erosion issues.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of wildlife management acreage in South Texas as well. If you look at NRI stuff, tons, and that's that's certainly ranch country down there, farm and ranch country down there. But there's some, very large ranches in wildlife management, and they're doing it with livestock production too. And so that's an important point. It's not an either or in wildlife. You can use livestock grazing as one of your qualifying activities. It doesn't preclude you from doing having your productive operation, but it does give you flexibility when you need it, and that just depends on your appraisal district and drought and all sorts of other things that you may run into where you need some flexibility for stocking rates and things like that.
That goes back to like Aldo Leopold tools for wildlife management. The axe, the cow, the plow, the fire, and the gun. They all have their place.
All have their place.
Axe, brush management. Maybe that's a caterpillar today.
A lot of times.
Plow, the cow, still grazing. Grazing or simulated grazing. And a lot of our clients will graze with exotics. You got to be careful they're not overly browsing and competing too, But exotics do. There's a big push today to utilize exotics because you can go in and depreciate them and cost segment.
Sure.
So
we got lots of clients with exotics on their property.
Clients with exotics. But what we're talking about when we say wildlife, it's indigenous native wildlife, not private hoof stock.
That's right.
Yeah, big difference. The state is not in. If you want to do exotics, you can do exotics in an ag valuation.
You can.
You can have an ag exemption ag valuation.
It's a little different than cows, but yes, you can. Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're selling hoof stock though, not hunts.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the difference. You're selling the animals, not the hunt.
That's right.
Yeah, and so you're producing food and fiber, not recreation.
Correct.
Yeah, and so you got the axe, the plow, the cow, the fire, prescribed burn. Tremendous tool. Harder on fragmented properties.
It is, and hard on private land. There's a lot of understandable anxiety, nervousness around burning. It's something we encourage. There are a lot of liability protections for private landowners burning on their own property in the state, but it's scary.
Sure it is.
And if even well-trained individuals, the ones you read about are the ones that get away.
Yeah.
And so that can scare folks, understandably. But it's a tool we talk about a lot. We want to encourage folks to try to point them to the Prescribed Burn Association so they can get help. Parks and Wildlife can come in and help with prescribed burns as well. There's not enough resources to do as much as we need to, but it's a fantastic tool, very important.
Then the fifth is the gun, population control.
Population control.
Or predator control.
Yes, you lived in Hays County, you understand.
Oh, yeah, baby. I understand.
You understand excessive deer numbers. And that's deer or exotics. You mentioned it. We have landowners with exotics. And again, as long as their primary use is native wildlife, you can still have exotics. There are places where, free ranging in Kendall County and Kerr County and those areas in the western hill country where you're going to have exotics if you're on a low fence.
If you want them
whether
or not.
you want them or not.
Correct.
And managing those numbers, really, really important, not just for white-tailed deer, but also for lots of other native wildlife. So managing exotics, managing white-tailed deer, if you're in the MLD program for deer, you're already, if you're in the conservation option, you're already checking off most of the boxes, if not all of the boxes you need for your wildlife management evaluation.
Yeah, and the MLD is a habitat management program.
It is.
Yeah, it's designed to keep whitetail herds healthy so that you have a healthy habitat browse. You're not becoming overly populated.
That's right. And that is a problem in a lot of parts of the state. Not everywhere, but in a lot of parts of the state. We've got a whole lot more deer now than we did 60, 70 years ago. Y'all talked about it on the Screwworm podcast, as a matter of fact.
Did you listen to that?
I did. It was fantastic.
I learned a lot with Dr. Lansford.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. It's always fun to talk about flesh-eating maggots. So
I would have some anxiety if I was heavily invested in exotics down in South Texas.
Yes, agreed. So MLD is that. There are two options. There's a harvest option, which is just, here's what our models say you should be harvesting on this size property, which in a lot of areas is going to be lower than you need. It depends. There are cases where that works, and that's pretty easy to get into. It does give you tags that you can harvest outside of your hunting license. But the conservation option really is a habitat management program. Yeah. You're gonna get more liberal tag tag allowances. You're gonna get more liberal tag allowances. But you've got to be doing active management for that as well. And like I said, those practices also qualify for wildlife management valuation for your property taxes.
So what are the 7 wildlife management categories that a landowner has to be active in, and what intensities?
Yep. So the 7 categories are habitat control, erosion control, supplemental water, supplemental food, supplemental shelter, and
predator control,
census, and I skipped predator control.
And a census.
That's right. Yeah. And taking census activities. So I was running down the matrix in my head, and I missed that one. But yeah, so you got 7 categories. There are many activities under each of those categories. Sure. And so you're looking at 50 plus different potential practices to qualify in those categories. You do have to spread things out. So you can't say do 3 activities in habitat control. Yeah. The law does require you to spread it out. You need a minimum of 1 in that category to count that category, and then you're taking up to at least 3.
At least 3.
At least 3.
At the minimum intensity to show primary use in at least 3.
That's right. And the intensities vary a lot depending on where you are, which ecoregion. Depends on your property. It's why working with a professional helps. The Parks and Wildlife guidelines are very thick, and they're made to guide anybody who wants to read them through the process, but they're not always clear on how much you need to do on your specific property. And the reason is biologists can't, Parks and Wildlife can't write guidelines that fit every single scenario. So that's a lot of what we do is take this very long, complicated document and distill it down and apply it to your place. So what do you have? What do you want to accomplish? What species do you want to manage for? Here are the practices that work best for you. And we always have a litany of options, right? And we may give you 12 different options. You don't have to do all 12. You got to pick at least 3, but you're going to have a lot of options to choose from. Does this one fit my budget? Is this something I really want to do? Do I really like spending my time shredding? Well, great. You got an activity we can find for you. You can still shred if you want, because that's the way you want to spend your time. But you're going to have lots and lots of options. And we have landowners who do 12, 15 different things. And we have landowners who do 3, we recommend a minimum of 5. You want to always have some buffer in there, a little insurance in case whatever, your equipment breaks down or you don't get to something one year, as long as you've got that third one ticked off. So if you got 4 or 5 and you miss one, you're still good. Don't have to worry about the appraisal district questioning whether you're meeting the intensity.
Got it. What services all do y'all offer now, Shane? When I was with Plateau, it all centered around the wildlife plan. Have you diversified out of that, or is that still
we do? That's
mainly the business today?
That's our hook. That's what gets folks in the door, right? That incentive program is what brings most folks to us. That we do, like I said, we do a lot of just open space ag applications. I think we do over 100 of those a year. A lot of those maybe around beekeeping on smaller properties to help them build that agricultural valuation.
History of use.
History of use, yep. But we've got some where it's a livestock operation, maybe a leasee, whatever, but it's a landowner that needs help getting that application in. So we do 100 plus of those each year, but mostly our hook is that wildlife management plan, that tax valuation on that side. And so we offer services around not only getting them into the program, so try to be turnkey there. All the landowner has to do is show up, talk to us about what they want to see out of their property. That's important. We do want to know what their goals are, and then go through the options. They pick what they want with our advice, and then all they've got to do is sign off. So we can talk about kind of that next level of service that we provide beyond just being wildlife biologists, but we do those plans and applications. And then we provide services around a lot of those activities. And so we do brush management. We do a lot of herbicide applications. That's an area where we're seeing lots of demand, lots of growth, managing things like prickly pear, mesquite, McCartney rose out east. Yeah, all kinds of exotic vegetation like ligustrum and chinaberry, things like that, which require some expertise to do well. You can spend a lot of time and money on herbicide, and if you're not doing it the right way, you've wasted a lot of time and money on herbicide, and you're not getting the result you want.
You have to maintain a private applicator's license for that stuff?
For some of it, you absolutely do. Depends on what the herbicide.
Applicator's license,
we do, We've got a commercial applicator's license on staff, so we can provide that service. So we do lots of that, and general consulting. Again, I consult with properties that have exotic operations or have livestock operations, but want to do wildlife management activities as well. We do predator control activities like treating for fire ants. So we do a lot of fire ant treatment. That's a high demand activity. It's a really good one for smaller properties because you can treat fire ants ideally a couple of times a year. Potentially have a high impact. If you're doing it steady, have a high impact on reducing those numbers. You're not going to get rid of them, but you can knock those numbers way back and do lots of good for a wide variety of wildlife, not just quail and the game animals, but lots and lots of wildlife are impacted by the presence of imported red fire ants. We do a lot of that. We sell pig brigs. We're a pig brig dealer. So we got one of the world's experts on wild pigs on staff now, Dr. John Kinsey. He came on last year, and
what's the product you said?
He's pig brig. So it's a corral trap, but it's a net-based corral trap.
Okay.
The advantage of it is its portability and its ease of deployment. So as opposed to corral traps in general, we're going to talk about pigs. The most effective way to manage pig numbers on a property is generally not driving around occasionally and shooting at pigs that you see. It's just not going to put much of it. It's fun and they taste good, but it's not going to put much of a dent in it. So capturing whole sounders is the best way to effectively manage pigs on a private property. And so corral traps are the best way to do that. And there's lots of different designs. There's metal corral traps with remote control, remote drop gates. Lots of different styles of those. Those can be fantastic. They're heavy. You got to have the right spot for them. They're hard to move, but they work great. And I've got clients who use those with great success. Pig brig's unique, and we try to deal in the products that we sell. We try to find things that are different, that they're hard. Either we're going to build them because nobody's offering them, or we're going to find something that's different, unique, and a little harder to find. The pig brig is a net-based trap. And yes, nets can hold pigs. It is not a holding pen. That's important. But it is a very effective trap. And again, its beauty is its portability. And the fact that you can, if you need to, because pigs don't always stay in the same place. And so you may catch a sounder over here, but you need to move that trap and catch a sounder somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or when they come back, they may be using a different area. So it's portable, it's unique, and it's a little more affordable than some of those big, heavy corral-based systems. And so nothing against those. We like to carry something that's a little more accessible and unique for our clients. So that's a new one for us. Predator control activities. And supplemental food, we sell a variety, again, of somewhat unique feeders. We try to find things. You can go pick up a protein feeder or corn feeder at your feed. Those aren't hard to find. We try to find things that are a little harder to locate, and generally serving non-game species, songbirds. We sell a platform style feeder. There have been others on the market, but that's still one of our biggest sellers. Was when you were there too.
Oh, yeah.
That platform wild turkey and bird feeder is
see them all over property.
Yes, phenomenal product. We've been selling since I started, and it's changed a lot. It's not a wooden platform made of 2x8s that I had to move by myself into my backyard to store. It's all metal, but very, very effective. So a variety of feeders, nest boxes, Texas built. Rough cut cedar nest boxes for songbirds. That's a really popular activity. Again, even with some large properties, providing cavities for songbirds. That one's really attractive because it's visual for appraisal districts, right? They can go out and see. You can point to that nest box and say, "I've got this in place," as opposed to something like strip mowing or shallow disking, which a month after you do it may not be evident anymore, and can be hard to see. So nest boxes, and we do all kinds of census activities, from bird surveys to deer surveys, spotlights, and drones.
You doing the thermal drone surveys?
We are, we are. Those are lots of fun.
Effective.
They're lots of fun.
Yeah, very effective. I had one done the other day, and the guy brings out big TV screen, sets it up in the parking lot at the ranch, or in the driveway at the ranch. You got to be in the center of the ranch. And it happens to be that this place was 2 sections, and the house and barn's right in the middle. So we set up right there, got our lawn chairs. We met at 6 a.m. His big screen TV, and I'm watching the whole thing on the. It was great.
Lots of fun.
I didn't know y'all
interesting.
did those.
Yeah, we do. We've been doing those. This is I guess we've wrapped up our second year. Of those. We're working on expanding our drone services too, doing aerial imagery, up to date aerial imagery. You may not be surprised. You probably get this too. A lot of folks will provide them with an aerial map. They go, "Well, widen the driveway I put in last week on that map."
Yeah, no doubt.
It's because Google doesn't fly that often, right?
Yeah, no question.
So we'll be offering up to date, aerial imagery for folks so they can capture those new improvements and things like that on their property. So that we're spooling that up, this year. That's one of our big initiatives this year, is to try to find things that complement that wildlife valuation, but also just serve landowners with those needs, and things like our herbicide services we provide to folks in production as well, right? It's that can be reliable and effective and committed applicators aren't easy to find everywhere, right? There's a lot of local folks. They serve a pretty small area, so we're trying to do that in as big of an area as possible. That's been really effective for us as well. So
I want to pivot topics a little bit and talk about what trends you're seeing in the state, landowner interest, landowner demand, size of properties. What trends have you seen last 5-10 years?
They're getting smaller.
Yeah.
They're getting smaller. That's been true. If you
average
look at
client size for Plateau today is what?
It's average is about 160 acres.
Okay.
Our median property, however, is somewhere between 40 and 50.
Okay.
Lots and lots of properties on that smaller end. Again, for what we're doing, those are the folks who may have a hard time getting service. Also folks who need maybe counterintuitively more attention, because effectively managing on small properties can be a lot of work. It's not necessarily easier just because you've got less acreage.
Sure.
And to do it well, particularly. So, and that's come down probably, I'd say in the time I've been tracking it, that's come down. Both of those have probably come down maybe, let's say 15%. Something like that, 10 or 15% over the last 20 years on average. Now, we still work with some very large properties.
Sure.
If you look at NRI's data, what you'll see is the really big ranches, ranch consolidation. You're seeing some growth there, and you're seeing a whole lot of growth in that sub 100 acre.
Correct.
And everything in the middle is declining.
Correct.
They're getting broken up or they're getting consolidated.
Correct.
We're missing a whole big section.
All
in the
that
middle.
track's really consistent with our data also.
Yeah.
In real estate.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it is the nature. We've only got so much land and we got more and more people moving here. So land size is going to get smaller. Our hope is that we can help people manage, even if it's a smaller piece, manage it as well as possible.
Has the demand changed at all, Shane, with that?
Absolutely.
There's more information and data available to people today than there's ever been. So how's that changed the demand or changed the sales process?
The best example of that is, and you saw it in real estate, is the COVID bump, right? You saw 5 years of sales compressed into 2, something like that.
Yeah.
We saw that same trend. So all those new landowners needed to do something. They needed help. A lot of them rushed out to buy rural land, some of them without any idea of what they needed to do with it.
Yeah.
And so we saw a incredible increase in demand for our services during that time. And we did see some normalization in 24, 25. It's ticking back up. We're reaching new areas. And so we're bucking that trend a little bit, but that's where demand goes. And as any areas where you've got, it's unfortunate, anywhere you've got active fragmentation going on, there's going to be more demand for this stuff because it's just a landowner's numbers game, right? So if I've got what was 1,000 acre property and there's now 10 landowners with 100 acres, that's 10 more landowners that need help, or 9 more. One before and 10 now. So that's kind of the way it goes. That's what we're seeing. And we are seeing an increased interest in just the full service. Folks who they're busy, they really don't want to deal with appraisal districts at all. Don't blame them. That's what we do for them. And so we've seen a lot of interest in just a little more full service stuff. Folks who really just want to enjoy the property and not worry about dealing with even the activities, certainly not dealing with reporting to the appraisal district, things like that. So that's been a real growth area for us as well. And again, we're there to meet that demand. We're there to help folks. We still have folks who all they want is a little bit of advice and maybe a plan, and they go take care of everything else. That's fantastic. And then we've got folks who just want to say, yeah, do this and y'all take care of it and let me know if you need anything from me.
Sure. What qualifies, Shane? And we get land specific here and a little bit away from the services that y'all provide. And let's just break down what qualifies as 1D1 ag versus wildlife. How would you decide? Biggest we've kind of talked about misconceptions, but let's talk about acreage qualifications because that's where some people get crossed up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Let's talk about acreage qualification.
And that can be tricky. So the other trend, you talked about trends we're seeing on the appraisal district side. What we're seeing is increased attention to those ag standards, particularly around intensity and in a lot of cases, minimum size requirements for, say, grazing land or certain crop production activities or hay production. So we've seen over the past 2 or 3 years a really increasing attention to size of agricultural properties from appraisal districts. And the difference.
Give me an example of that.
Well, so an appraisal district may say, there's this gets nuanced, right? But the appraisal district in ag has the right to say, this is what a typical producer looks like in our county. So this is what a typical cow-calf operation looks like in our county. This is what a typical hay operation looks like in this county. And that's the comptroller directs them to do that at that local level. And there's advantages to that, right? The county should know better what a producer should be doing in that county. But they'll take that and they'll say, okay, a typical cow-calf operation has 3 animal units and you need a minimum of 15 acres to support those 3 animal units, right? So if you don't have 15 acres, you're going to have more issues qualifying for that type of operation.
Because the property cannot sustain that minimum animal units.
That's right.
The tax code speaks to that also. Your property needs to be capable of sustaining a minimum animal units.
Not really, actually. The property tax code doesn't, it's agnostic about size.
Okay.
Completely about size, except for bees. Bees are the only ag use with a statutory size requirement. That's between 5 to 20 used for bees. 5 acres used for bees up to 20 acres used for bees. That's it. Everything else is open and determined at that local level.
So a 5 acre parcel with a house, 1 acre homestead, 4 acres of open space qualify for bees or no?
Nope.
No.
It will not.
Need a 6 acre tract.
Need a 6 acre tract, or you need 5.5 and you need to get that homestead down to 0.5, which can be a challenge in itself sometimes. But that's right. So that's the only one. So there's a lot of leeway, and the comptroller's manual lays out, this is what the chief appraiser is responsible for doing. They're responsible for setting those typical requirements for their county. But those are guidelines. The comptroller's manual also says an operation that's not typical isn't automatically disqualified, but you're going to have to go extra steps to prove that you are primarily using the property for a qualified agricultural use to the degree of intensity accepted in the area. And that's just extra work. So as you get smaller and smaller, it's a little bit harder. And arguably it should be, right? You don't want to encourage people to chop it up into 3 acre ranchettes and say, well, everybody gets ag because you got some open space around your house. That's not the intent of the law. So we're seeing that on the ag side of things. Wildlife management's a little bit different because the requirement for wildlife, the way the law is written, is if the property was qualified open space land in the prior year, it qualifies for wildlife management, period. That's the law. That's what it says. But there are rules that state if a property has been reduced in size since the previous tax year, then it's subject to minimum acreage requirements. And those requirements are going to vary depending on which appraisal region you're in. And the appraisal district gets a range to choose from. They can choose the low end or the high end. They can't go below it. They can't go above it, but they've got this range. And that's where
the chief appraiser, the ag appraiser, or is there a board or a board that decides those things?
It's so on the wildlife side, what it says now is the chief appraiser chooses with the advice of the board.
The appraisal review board.
Yep.
Okay.
So board of directors. So but it is now the chief appraiser's responsibility. It used to have to be approved by that's all minutia, but it used to have to be approved by the board. But now the chief appraiser gets to pick, the board just has to basically consent. So they get to pick within that range. Now, what we do commonly see is a misunderstanding on that side for wildlife management, and that's an appraisal district saying, well, no property under this acreage can qualify for wildlife in this county, and that's just not true. And we have those discussions all the time. We have sometimes arguments or protests around those things. It's important because the rules are really clear that if you've got 10 acres in ag, you can, and you didn't buy it off a larger property last year, you have every right to move it to wildlife management. So we spend, there's a handful or more of those each year that we've got to deal with, usually in counties that just don't deal with it very often. But we've got great success in walking them through that. So we do that in a lot of cases for free for our clients because we want to make sure that law gets applied properly. And that they're not being mistreated. Now, if your property was reduced in size, you gotta meet those size requirements, period. And there's no question about that.
Yeah. Where do you see landowners getting in trouble?
A couple of places. On the front end, landowners who are trying to develop their own plan often get a little overzealous about what all they can do and what all they should do on their property, right? They go down that checklist of 50 plus activities and say, yeah, I'm doing that. I can do that. I'm doing that. I've literally seen plans that had almost every box checked. And half those activities don't even apply on your property. It's not clear a lot of times the way the guidelines are written, if you're not a natural resources professional, that's not what that practice means, right? If you don't really understand it. So that's a common one up front, is just throwing too much at it, half of which doesn't apply. And then they also don't know where to fogus their energy, right? We want to encourage folks to do as much as possible, but if you've got 25 activities, you're going to be so scattered, you're not going to do any of them very well, probably, right? So that's common up front. On the back end, it's really documentation. It's taking the time when you're out doing your activities to make a note, write in a journal. Hey, April 26th, I went and checked water sources. all functional or had to repair one. I went and filled feeders. I did a census activity on this date. I did brush management in this area on these dates, or I hired someone to do it on these dates.
Yeah, photo documentation, receipts.
Documentation is the biggest problem we see with landowners. And I think that's probably true in anything where I'm sure CPAs say the same thing about their income tax claim.
I can only imagine.
Yes. So documentation's a big one. And that's when we're out doing stuff, everything's documented to the T. You don't have to worry about it. But we have a lot of landowners who do it on their own or who do some of their activities. And part of what we want to do is give them instructions on how to keep good documentation and keep it accessible. The appraisal district, not every appraisal district asks for a report each year. A lot of them do. It's the best way for them to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. But not all of them do. And a lot of landowners may go years with no issues. I haven't kept documentation for 5 years. Why do I need to start now? Because a change in staff at that appraisal district can change policy in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. I have folks who say, well, it's been fine. I say, yeah, but you got a new chief appraiser and they look at things differently and they have every right to ask you. And so if you haven't been keeping documentation, you should start now.
Well, they get audited by the comptroller too.
They do. They get checked. That's all around school taxes. But when that comptroller's rep comes in, they pay attention because they don't want to get slapped on the hand around misappraising open space land, because that does ultimately affect school values. That's a different conversation we can have too, and an important one. It's actually a net positive for schools, but it does impact the total taxable value of the land in the county, and so they pay attention to that.
You talked about minimum acreages earlier. I want to go back to that. I had a couple of questions. Is that a standard across the state, or there's different regions that have different acreages?
Different regions. There's different appraisal regions. And each appraisal region has a range. It's unnecessarily complicated.
Do those follow eco regions or habitat regions or what?
Roughly follow eco regions.
Okay.
And so you've got one, and a lot of them are combined. So you've got one set of guidelines for Blackland Prairie. You got a set of guidelines for Edwards Plateau, the eastern part of Edwards Plateau, and then one for the western part of Edwards Plateau. So they're on county lines. And as you know, ecoregions don't always follow county lines. So in Hayes County and Travis and Williamson and
I-35
Bell,
corridor. Yeah.
You've got half that are in the Plateau and half that are in Blackland Prairie or Post Oak Savannah. So, but all those appraisal regions follow county lines. So Hayes County's in eastern Edwards Plateau. So it's got to follow that minimum requirement for the eastern Edwards Plateau. And that ranges in general for a standalone property. You're looking at anywhere from as low as 16.7 up to 20.
Okay.
And so the appraisal district can choose somewhere in that range. Most of them choose the top end, but not all of them. But they can choose anywhere within that range to say, if your property's been subdivided in the last year, you have to have at least this many acres to move to wildlife management. Yeah. And then if you're in what's called a Wildlife Management Property Association, that means you've got at least one neighbor who's contiguous with you, who is also in wildlife management, and y'all have a legally binding agreement to manage for wildlife, you can qualify for a lower percentage.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You see so many developments, these ranch developments that have cut everything into 10-acre tracts.
Yep.
What do? Well, first, most appraisal districts have gone to 10.01 acres.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
most have gone to appraisal districts.
Yeah.
Most counties and their development departments have gone to 10.01 acres for minimum tract size for development. Why they did that, I really don't know, but they did. I think they all adopted the same. I think they all adopted the same development regs and just changed the counties. They've done the same thing with road-based standards and gone to TxDOT standards on the roads and all these things. Some of that makes sense because the counties don't want to inherit bad roads. The counties are responsible for providing fire, EMS, first responder service, and so they have to ensure that there's quality roads. If you're living at the back of this road that's got 20 ranchettes on it and the roads wash out and you have a heart attack and they can't get an ambulance to you, the county's got to ensure that that's not the case.
You bet.
But there's been tons of properties cut up in the last 10 years. And 10 or 10.01 acre tracts.
Right.
And so if it's a primary residence, they're going to put a half acre or a 1 acre homestead on it. What do those people do?
This episode is brought to you by the Mock Ranches Real Estate Group. At Mock Ranches, we specialize in representing buyers and sellers of farms, ranches, and recreational land across the state of Texas. Our team sold over $1.25 billion of Texas land, and we focus on helping landowners make smart decisions about their most valuable assets. If you're thinking about buying or selling, or simply want to understand the land markets better, get a hold of us at mockranches.com. Mock Ranches, Texas land represented right.
The Wildlife Management Association standards can work, but usually not at that 10 acre level, actually. So that 10 acre level is usually too small. And we've worked with a lot.
They're too small to fence and graze too.
That's right. And so you see a lot of them attempt,
unless you're in East Texas and you get super rain,
you see a lot of them attempt to, have a grazing cooperative,
cows that roam the whole
freely.
place. Yeah.
And then you can't fence, because if you fence them out, you don't qualify anymore.
Right.
So that's pretty common. We run into a lot of those. Unfortunately, on the back end, after it's too late, they've already cut them up and they say, well, we want to put these in wildlife. You can't. They're too small.
Right.
They're not going to work. You can't take all these 10 acre properties and move them into wildlife management. They're too small. You didn't meet that minimum size requirement. And as you sell them off, they're all subject to that minimum size requirement. So in general, the only place where you get down to 10 acres potentially, and that's the low end, is way out in East Texas. And that's in a WMPA way out in East Texas.
Yeah.
So in most of the part where you're seeing a lot of that work is here up the center of the state.
Sure.
Plateau through the Lampasas Cut Plain and on up to here into the cross timbers and things. You're seeing those 10 acre ranchettes. All of those are too small. There is none of those ecoregions allow for wildlife management property associations at 10 acres.
Used to be 12 and a half, I thought.
So in a lot of
for a wildlife management association,
a lot of them it's 12 and a half on the top end and like 11.1 on the bottom. So generally you're looking at a minimum of 11. But again, most appraisal districts take that top end. So you're looking at 12 and a half. That's generally a good rule. If you're not staying above 12 and a half acres in that subdivision.
Plus whatever space you have with your house and barns on it, right?
It's actually just the total size of the tract that matters. Okay. You don't have to worry about the area you take out for your house or your barn.
That's good.
It's the total size of the tract that matters. That's really critical. But if you're at 12.49, it doesn't qualify.
Yeah. You
got to be at 12.5 or higher. And again, we see that all the time.
And if you have 2 or 3 contiguous tracts that make that up, do you have to, is that good? 2 or 3 contiguous tracts make up.
That covers it. You're good. Fine. If you own 2 10-acre tracts and you're at 20 acres,
don't need to resurvey that to one 20-acre parcel.
It's all parcels under contiguous parcels under common ownership. So if I buy 2 10-acre tracts, I'm good for wildlife, independent of what anybody else is doing. Got it. And so that is important as well. We see that a lot. Now, if you ever sell one of those lots,
you just did a reduction in size.
You both have the problem again.
Yeah, both got a problem. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So we,
in our world, that's what happens when these, that's what happens when these residential agents come into our space and start leading people astray because they don't understand any of it.
No, and they don't understand, and they don't. There's really no reason they should. Right?
They should call me or call you.
They should. And we provide.
As a fiduciary, that's what, honestly, I mean, as much as I'd like to get the business, the truth is, as a fiduciary, they're not doing their client a good service. They should actually call somebody that understands what they're doing.
Absolutely. And we provide continuing education to realtors. We talk with realtors all the time about just that thing. If there's realtors out there, they don't have to know anything. They only have to know our phone number because we answer questions all day long. That's what we're there for. And I don't want to see, they're not my client yet, but I don't want to see your client get into trouble because you didn't understand the intricacies sometimes of that appraisal district and what they're going to run into.
Yeah, so my clients won't get in trouble.
That's
somebody else's might. Our guys know.
Won't get in trouble.
Our guys know what the heck they're doing. That's why our clients hire us.
That's right.
But some of these other knucklehead agents, their clients probably going to get in trouble if they don't call you.
Yeah. So that we try to be that resource for them. We try to be a resource for the appraisal district. So we're unique in that we spend all our time in a very small sliver of the tax code.
Yeah.
Right? So all of our biologists, all of our consultants are registered property tax consultants. we have to be technically by law in order to represent them and
Correct.
provide tax advice. So in order to work with that appraisal district on their behalf, we have to be registered property tax consultants with the state. I'm senior property tax consultants for all our consultants. But when you take those classes, they spend about 5 minutes on open space.
Yeah.
Literally. And now the classes that I send folks to, they say, go talk to those people in the back, pointing at our staff if you want to learn about open space, because it's most of what tax consultants do doesn't have anything to do with it. And they don't want to deal with it. So we try to be a resource to those market value tax agents. They don't need to be messing with open space. And it's not that it's incredibly difficult. It's just that there's lots of quirks and intricacies that can get you in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said, it's a huge tax incentive, which means if you mess it up, what seems like a really simple form, if you mess it up, it's a really expensive mistake.
Well, let's get into that.
Expensive.
Let's take a quick break, and then I want to get into rollback, market tax. What happens then?
You bet.
Let's take a real quick break.
You do.
Because I need some water. And that'll be a good spot for taking.
Brought to you by Mock Ranch Group. I'm not giving you fits over there, am I? No. Okay.
Where are we at on time, Josh? That's with the breaks. We're just under an hour. Okay. All right. All right, guys, welcome back. Shane, I want to talk about rollback taxes.
Yep.
What happens when somebody's out of compliance just due to negligence or, dang, I got caught.
Yep.
Missed a deadline. What happens there?
The most common thing, if you're just missing deadlines, if you just didn't quite get everything done, is you're going to lose evaluation for that year, that tax year,
Okay.
right? So
That's if the use didn't change.
That's
I
right.
didn't change use.
That's right.
I missed my filing.
You just didn't. The appraisal district asked you for a new application or for evidence, whether it's ag or wildlife, and you didn't give it to them. You've got to respond to those appraisal district notices. And if you don't do that, typically you're going to lose it for that tax year, and you're going to have to work next year to get it back.
Yeah.
Now, if you get one of those notices,
It's an important thing to maintain activities at the minimum intensity,
Yes.
all that. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Now,
you don't lose history of use.
yes. And if you do get one of those notices, you have the right to protest that. And if you've got the evidence, you can provide it later and work through that process. You shouldn't necessarily, if you've been doing what you needed to do, but you just missed a deadline, you should protest. You should work through that. We help landowners with
There's a
that all the
deadline for
time.
protesting that.
There is. It's going to be 30 days from the date of whatever letter you got that says we're removing your open space valuation, or from your notice. If you got a notice of appraised value and the open space is removed, and that's not always easy to tell. We get a lot of those from folks who don't understand how to read it. But if you get that notice, or certainly if you get a letter that says, and you should get a letter that says we've removed your open space valuation, you typically have 30 days to protest that. And if you miss that, you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
And if you get to your tax bill in October, and that's when you realize you're almost certainly out of luck. So that's the most common. Now, if you cease all use, so you remove every cow from your property, you cease producing any crops, doing any sort of work on crop production, you cease all wildlife management use, or if you actively change the use of the land. So you start turning dirt.
To develop. Yeah.
To develop. If you do that, that's when you're subject to potential rollback taxes. That's the penalty that you pay for actively taking land out of open space and moving it to another use. And that's been around since the original 1D ag valuation, since the 60s. So when they put that first one in, they said, you know what, this is a big benefit, it's important, but we're also going to provide some disincentive for getting out. And I actually think that's important from a policy standpoint. So that disincentive is there. Now, on the open space side, they've lessened that disincentive.
3 years?
It's 3 years, no
Used to be
interest.
5.
Used to be 5 with 7% interest per year.
Oh.
So it was like a 7-year tax clawback. It's now 3 years, no interest. But that still can be quite significant, especially on a larger property. And we do see that happen for folks who just haven't done anything. They stop all qualifying use of any kind, and then they get that notice there was a change in use, and they get a 6-figure rollback tax bill, because it's 3 years of the difference in taxes, what you would have paid in market value and what you actually paid in an ag or wildlife value. So it can be significant, and it comes all at once. And so we don't want to see, if someone didn't actually change the use of that property, we certainly don't want to see people get hit with those tax bills. You can protest or roll back a change of use notice, and you should if you haven't actually changed the use. But if you were out there turning dirt and developing it, it's valid. You need to pay your rollback taxes.
Change of use could be, I got cows or I don't have cows.
It can.
From wildlife and going
That's
to cows
less
or
common. It's less common if you just cease all use. But the rules do say, the Comptroller's Manual does say, a complete cessation is technically a change in use. We don't always see the appraisal districts go that aggressively unless it's been multiple years or there's some other issue, perhaps. It's usually when there's active change in use. And so that cessation can be important, though. So if you haven't had, and that's not, to be clear, that is not you haven't met the intensity requirements. That's not, well, I had a few cows, but I didn't have enough. That's not a change of use. That's
What
just,
happens there?
There you just lose it until you get the intensity back up.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just going to lose it for that year. You're not going to be hit with rollback.
So
you lose it for that
three
year.
Things. There, I'm not meeting minimum intensity, but I also haven't changed the use.
Correct.
It's still a ranch with no intensity. It's not a development, right?
Yep.
So I've got a ranch with meeting intensity requirements, qualifying for open space.
Yep.
I've got a ranch with deferred activities, not meeting the minimum intensity. So I still consider it a ranch.
Mm-hmm.
I can pick up intensity and qualify.
Yep.
And then I've got a ranch that's taken out of ranching and gone into
Some other
something
use.
else.
Yep.
Yeah, some other use.
Yep.
That's what triggers a rollback.
That's what triggers a rollback. And we see that, we think about, well, it's, being developed for housing or something, but we see that on things that are otherwise, recreational uses on those land, like it may be bike tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you take a portion of your property and you develop a bike track for folks to come enjoy on the weekend and pay you. That's a change of use, right? And so things like that people don't think about because they didn't start building houses or businesses on it, those can still trigger rollback. And it may only be on a portion of the property. That's important as well. Rollback only applies to the portion of the property that actually changes use. So if you take 10 acres.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
If you take 10 acres and you change use on that, you don't owe rollback on the whole thing. You only owe rollback on that 10 acres of land because the rest of the land still is being used and is qualified. So that's really important.
We used to do that a lot for developers. They'd buy, 150 acres of corn farm. It's gonna they're gonna develop 20 acres at a time, sell to D.R. Horton, Pulte, Lennar, whatever. Yeah. And so as long as they continue to farm the remaining, they can continue farming that. They remove whatever acres they're actually working on in this calendar year, roll that back. It helped them with their pro forma and carry cost.
It does. It's a cash flow issue for them, right? It's they want to wait till they've got that income. They're still the appraisal district is still imposing those taxes. They're still getting those 3 years of back taxes. It's just delayed a little bit.
Yeah.
And interestingly, sometimes that means that the developer ends up paying more.
Yeah.
Because those land values start going up and rollback gets more and more expensive. But it's often still the choice that they want to make. And so, that's pretty common. Yeah. But that's really important for a landowner is just because you take part of your property, you're not sacrificing the entire ranch because you change use on a small portion.
Yeah. Shane, if somebody buys a ranch, let's say they buy it in Q1, Q2, early part of the year, what do they need to do in order to be meeting intensity when they apply?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think a lot of them there's a gap, and there's probably some grace there too, but there's a gap I see in management, 3, 6, 9, 10 month gap right there for a lot of new owners.
Yeah. The most important thing you can do, Q1 and Q2 are tricky, right? Because that filing deadline's April 30th. And I was having this conversation with folks just last week because it comes up this time of year. I'm closing now. What do I need to do for this year? Because you still got responsibility for the rest of this year.
Sure you do.
Even though you may not need to apply until 2027, you've got responsibility for the rest of this year. So you need to think carefully about it. Often that's just working with the appraisal district, letting them know what your plans are so that they're not surprised. Appraisers hate surprises. Yeah. I don't blame them.
Is that a phone call? Is that an email? What is that?
Ideally, it's in writing. It's an email, but a phone call may be the start. You talk to them, say, hey, what can I do? And then follow up with an email and say, all right, this is what I understand. That's what we do typically.
Yeah.
If we're working on behalf of landowners, we're going to talk to them about it, and then we'll follow up with an email. So we've got something in writing. How it gets applied varies a lot by appraisal districts. Some appraisal districts work entirely on January 1 ownership. And they're serious about it.
No kidding.
Now that's not the most common, but there are some that tell us if you bought January 2nd, don't apply till next year.
Don't talk to us
till next year. Most of them, if they get to it, if they pick up that deed change before the notices go out, which is supposed to be April 1st, then they want something. And what the law requires is that particularly if you're going to change the type of agricultural use, the type, not going from ag to wildlife is a change in type. But even I'm going to stop grazing and I'm going to cut hay. That's a change in the type of agricultural use. You're supposed to notify the appraisal district of that by April 30th. So that's another reason for a new application because you change the type of use.
Reapplication.
Doesn't mean you're gonna lose evaluation, but you do need to make sure you notify them because if they find out later you change the use, they can come back and some minor penalties can apply to that because you may be supposed to be in a different productivity evaluation. Mm-hmm. So that's certainly true if you're going from traditional ag to wildlife management, you need to notify them of that use. So we get lots of folks who buy in January, February, and they want to transition immediately to wildlife. They've got time to do that. We can make that application, and they start their activities now. And then if that application gets in by the deadline, they're technically in wildlife all the way back to January 1st, right? So it's retroactive to the beginning of the year. Folks who buy, let's say today, if you close today, the appraisal district's not going to know about it yet. They're not going to have you on the rolls. You're really tight for making that transition. It's not that you can't, but it's really tight. So you need some extra communication with the appraisal district to find out, all right, what's the best course here? Can I rest for the rest of this year while I work on my wildlife and apply next year? Mm-hmm. Often they'll let you do that, but you need to communicate that. Don't assume that you can just stop grazing it because the previous landowner took the cows.
Yeah.
You may need to, and in some cases, you may need to find a leasee or get cows to get on that place so you can meet the intensity for the rest of the year. And in general, we talk about majority of the year, so 6 months in a day.
Yeah.
So if you can maintain some use for at least 6 months out of the current year before you change the use next year, that's the safest course you can make. Unless you want to talk to the appraisal district and say, this is my plan. Can I just rest and start wildlife work now and apply next year? And a lot of times that's acceptable, but I wouldn't do it without communicating with them.
What are the exceptions as far as drought coverage for minimum intensity? When can you be destocked in agriculture?
Yeah, so there are a variety of exceptions, more now than there used to be in the tax code. Drought is one of them. So if your county is in a drought declared by the governor,
governor,
it's got to be on the proclamation.
Correct.
And those can be tricky to find and track, but you can find those proclamations. If you're on that proclamation, you can fall below intensity levels if you have the intent to go back to normal use after that. So as long as you're in that governor declared drought, you can fall below intensity and they can't remove it for that. There's also exceptions for things like cattle fever ticks, quarantines, things like that, where you are restricted perhaps from meeting those intensity requirements. Restrictions for citrus producers in some cases if you're in quarantine zone for those. So there are specific cases where you can fall below those intensity requirements for a period of time, but you have to get back into it as soon as that drought's lifted or as soon as you're not in that restricted quarantine zone anymore, whatever it is. So you have to have that intent to go back.
Outside of that, for production, is it still 5 out of 7 years you've got to meet?
5 out of 7, yeah. Unless you're in the city limits, it's 5 out of 5 in the city limits. There are a lot of operations in city limits. City limits are pretty extensive. Limits is tricky because if you ever lose it, you can't get it back. You got to rebuild 5 years again.
Yeah.
You got to rebuild 5 years again. You're starting from scratch right away. But generally, it's 5 out of 7. That's the history requirement we talk about. And we didn't go through the 3 tests, but the one of the most important ones is 5 out of 7 years with the primary use being agriculture. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean intensity.
Yeah.
It does mean primary use. And so I've got to be able to show the appraisal district that at least for the last 5 out of the last 7 years, I've been using the property primarily for agriculture, and then I can qualify for open space. Mm-hmm. And so if you lose it for a year...
Can that be retroactive to the previous owner? Let's say the previous owner was not in 1D1, but their primary use is agriculture.
Absolutely.
I buy it. Can I go back and say, look, I can show you this person's had a lease agreement in place or they've had cows or whatever.
Absolutely. It's about the use of the land. Yeah. That's a really important part of
the land,
all
not the
of this.
landowner in that case.
It's not about you or what you do or what you want to do. It's about how you actively use the land. And so whether that's you or the previous owner or some future owner, that's what matters. So it follows that land use. You as the owner have to file and notify the appraisal district, but it's about the use of the land. So you can build it based on prior history use. We have landowners who we work with to start building history, even if they might sell the property in a few years, right? Because that's got some value to the buyer.
Sure.
I'm 3 years in or 4 years in, and you've only got a few more years to build history if you want to get it into open space. So that's not uncommon. Once you've been out, so 5 out of 7, if you haven't had any use for 3 consecutive years, you're starting over from scratch. Year 1, you got to go through 5 years of building history, and in year 6, you can qualify. You really don't want to be in that situation. So if you lose that valuation, or if you cease use or stop use, you don't want to get to that 3rd year because it gets really hard to get it back.
What would you tell somebody preparing to sell about their property tax 1-to-1 valuation? What should they be thinking about?
Preparing to sell.
Yep. Yeah, somebody wants to sell the ranch.
Yeah. I would, I'd tell them to have, because if somebody's buying, I say you should ask for those records.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd tell a seller, have those records. If you've been doing what you need to do, have those ready. Should they ask, or give them to them proactively and say, hey, this valuation's secure.
Yeah.
This is the basics I've been meeting it. It's been qualified. A lot of cases we just look at, folks will just look at the rolls and go, oh, it was appraised. It's good. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's not always true.
Not always true.
It may not have actually been used, even though the appraisal district had it appraised that way. So show them those records, particularly if you're in wildlife. Hand them 5 years of annual reports. They've got nothing to worry about if you can give them that evidence. That I would think, I'm not the real estate professional here, I would think that would have some value to a buyer. That's just security for that tax valuation. So I think that's really important.
Similarly, as a buyer, what questions should they be asking?
They should be asking about the historical use of that property. They should be checking the rolls and was it appraised as open space land. Don't assume that just because someone told you that that it's in ag or wildlife or anything else. Check those rolls. You can even call the appraisal district, but usually those rolls are available online and they're accurate. So check those rolls. But in addition to that, ask about any prior use or documentation. What have you been doing? In some cases, it's obvious, right? They've got a livestock operation on site. You can see it, or maybe it's evident from viewing the property. But you should ask, and ideally, they'd be able to provide you at least some basic evidence that they have been using the property for at least 5 of the previous 7 years, primarily for agriculture. And then you've got, if there's any question from the appraisal district, you've got that covered. Yeah. And I should point out, most appraisal districts for new buyers don't often look back at the previous owner. They can, and they do sometimes, but usually they're interested about, are you doing, the new owner, are you filing the proper applications, and are you doing what you need to do going forward? That's generally where they're looking. They don't like going backwards that much unless things get, really contentious.
Yeah. You see regulations loosening, tightening, much change in that?
For appraisal districts?
Yeah.
Generally tightening. Generally tightening. Yeah. I think that's a general trend, is they're getting a little more particular, especially on smaller properties.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to show primary use.
Really. It is.
The human footprint's pretty big.
Absolutely. So they're particularly paying attention to smaller properties, less so on big properties, but in general, they are trying to apply those standards they've developed a little more rigorously. Again, that's over the past probably 3 or 4 years we've seen that. A lot of that stems out of a case that occurred in Harris County that we won't get into details on, but that changed the approach of a lot of appraisal districts. Say, all right, these are our standards. You're going to follow these standards. Yeah. So generally we see that. So it's more important than ever that people are paying attention to what the county standards are and meeting them.
Where do you think we're headed, Shane? AI, fragmentation, growth. Where do you think we're headed the next 5 or 10 years?
That's a lot of questions all in one there.
It is, yeah. Got another hour?
I don't think you do. I think you had to get somewhere. Yeah, I think people, so certainly I don't see fragmentation stopping. No. Certainly. And I think that open space does all it can to limit that, but it's not going to stop it. People still need homes. People are going to move here. They need places to live. We're going to have to consume more of that land. It's just the way it is. And you've got other demands on that land now too, right? Lots of new demands on rural land that we haven't had. You mentioned AI, data centers, renewables, transmission lines.
Oh yeah.
Pipelines, lots of infrastructure demands as well. And so that's going to fragment that stuff.
How do those affect it? I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. If I've got a pipeline, a transmission line, I've got solar panels on a piece of property, how does all that affect my open space valuation? Yeah,
pipelines and transmission lines generally aren't an issue. Okay. So you do need to be proactive about making sure that, and hopefully you've negotiated in the condemnation agreement or whatever settlement agreement you've got with that company that they're going to do some restoration so you can continue to use it for open space. But that temporary deferment shouldn't be an issue. We don't see appraisal districts going after somebody who involuntarily had a pipeline come through their property. So those generally aren't an issue because the surface use doesn't really have to change. Solar panels are different. Solar panels absolutely change that surface use.
Absolutely.
The primary surface use. And that question's been coming up a lot. And folks have heard about agrivoltaics and things like that.
Heard about what?
Agrivoltaic. So grazing around.
Yeah, grazing sheep around
solar panels. The problem is that, as we've said multiple times, primary use. And so my professional opinion, unless they change the law, if you've got solar panels, the area that it's in solar panels, the primary use of that is solar panels.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have sheep grazing underneath them, and one of the tests for primary use is, well, when you make a decision, what takes precedence? And I bet you that your agreement with that solar company doesn't let you make a choice that's better for your sheep and bad for their panels. Yeah. Of course not.
Sure.
Wouldn't make sense. So primary use is the problem there. Now, wind turbines, you can continue to use land. You might lose some land on that pad, but wind turbines, cows graze on wind turbines all the time. Crops grown under wind turbines all the time. So that's less of an issue because that surface use isn't as heavy.
Yeah.
Oil and gas is not surprisingly got some exemptions that other things don't.
Sure.
In Texas. So oil and gas.
Grease is the wheel.
Yes. So oil and gas, actually, if you've got an oil pad, it is technically still qualified for open space if the land around it is qualified for open space. That's a separate story that's only interesting to people like me. But there is a legislative history there that I actually saw develop early on when I was at Plateau. And but oil and gas pads generally are, even that pad where that production is happening still qualifies for open space because of a change the legislature made in 2008 or 9 or something like that. So it varies a lot. Battery storage or data centers, things like that. Obviously, that's a change in use on the surface. It's not the area that's consumed by that is not going to qualify. The area around it still can.
Yeah.
But the area that data center sits on, that battery storage sits on, is going to come out. And landowners should account for that in their agreements with those companies. Right? Those companies should be paying, and that's typically what we see. When I talk to the attorneys upstairs at the office at Braun and Gresham, it's typically what we see is they're absolutely negotiating. You're going to pay the market value taxes for this place because it's coming out of ag.
Yeah, the attorney is. Same with developers.
Yeah,
whoever's
absolutely.
Triggering the change of use, basically.
Yes.
Whoever's causing
you're responsible for that.
change of use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Anything we didn't cover?
No, that was pretty good coverage.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you coming in. How can folks get a hold of Plateau, get a hold of you?
You can go to our website, plateauwildlife.com. We're all over social media now. We got a new guy who's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, he's doing really good.
And good content, useful content, educational stuff. But our website, plateauwildlife.com, you can call our main office, numbers on there. Feel free, if you have questions, if you're not sure, call us. We answer questions all day long. If you get that notice and you're not sure how to read it and you're worried about your open space, just call us. There may be nothing to worry about. There may be something to worry about, but we can give you a little peace of mind at the least. We're happy to review that stuff. So don't ever hesitate. Landowner, realtor, anybody working with rural land, if you run into those concerns about ag or wildlife valuations, timber, we're a resource for you. That's what we do.
Well, thanks for driving up, man. It's been so good to reconnect.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And we'll put some links to what you guys do in the show notes. We'll share this. Hope you all share it too. And
absolutely.
Drive some business to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, pay attention to your taxes. Property tax, a big deal. Deadlines, obviously very important. And these are good guys we can help too. So bye, everybody. Have a good day.
That wraps us up. I appreciate you listening to the Landowner Insider. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow the show, leave us a review, and share it with another Texas landowner. For more insights, listings, and resources for Texas landowners, visit mockranches.com. Until next time, I'm Kasey Mock, your host. This has been the Landowner Insider. Go get 'em.